family stood around discussing whether she should cross the bridge to fetch it herself, a man nearby silently put on his shoes and, without saying a single word, sprinted at full speed and leapt across the river, landing steadily on the opposite bank. Under everyone's shocked eyes, he picked up the girl's hat and brought it back, but instead of handing it directly to her, he stuffed it into her brother's hands and didn't dare say a word to her. Staring at the hat in her brother's hand, Meijin felt her heart suddenly struck. She started to pay attention to this man and discovered that every day he would buy 2 bottles of alcohol on time and always happened to bump into her after work, clearly trying to create accidental encounters. But every time their eyes met, he wouldn't say anything and would turn away coolly and walk off. Meijin, curious, followed him one day, intending to chat for a bit, but unexpectedly the man just kept walking faster and faster, not giving her a chance to speak at all. Meijin couldn't understand his behavior. The next day she got off work very late and was walking home alone when a group of thugs started tailing her. Just as she began panicking and didn't know what to do, she suddenly heard the familiar sound of clinking glass bottles from behind. She immediately knew the man was there. Her anxious heart finally settled down, and only after the thugs drove off did the man speed up and walk past her. For some reason, Meijin felt a strange sense of protection, and it seemed only this man could give her such safety. The next day, they ran into each other again. She thought they would just pass by like usual, but this time Meijin took the initiative to call out to him. The man became so nervous he didn't know what to say, and after struggling for a while, all he could say was, "Hurry up and catch the bus." But this simple sentence stirred Meijin's heart for a long time, even making her long, numb heart feel a strange flutter. Meijin was shy and introverted, never able to fit into the circles of colleagues at work, and since her home was far from Seoul, even though she had a decent appearance, in the eyes of her coworkers, she was practically invisible. Just her daily commute took 3 hours, and even on her days off, she helped her parents work in the fields. Sometimes Meijin would wonder, if they had been born in Seoul, would life have been different? But that day she got a call from the bank telling her that her loan was overdue by a month, and if she didn't repay it soon, they would send collection letters to her home. Meijin didn't dare let her family find out about the debt, so she secretly went to Mr. Ju, the man who often helped her family with chores, and begged him to help receive the letters for her. Mr. Ju agreed, and the next day, he nervously waited at her door. When the postman came by on a bike, he quickly rushed up to receive the mail and took the letter Meijin had asked him to intercept. Seeing the 3 big words "collection notice" on the envelope, he instantly understood Meijin's situation. He didn't ask anything and just quietly threw the letter into a drawer. That afternoon, he deliberately arranged to bump into Meijin after work and told her the letter had arrived. That evening, Meijin used the excuse of delivering food to go and pick it up. Seeing the 800,000 won debt on the letter, she still chose to leave it with Mr. Ju. She also tried texting the person who owed her the money, but that person ignored her. Feeling down, she headed home, only to see her father walking seriously toward Mr. Ju's house. Worried something happened, she followed, and it turned out Mr. Ju had drunk too much and fallen, his face covered in blood. Her mother mentioned that he had been drinking all winter, and Meijin realized that this man, who looked so positive on the outside, was actually living a messy and painful life. Wanting to break out of her own meaningless life, Meijin impulsively went to Mr. Ju and made a strange request. At some point, she had started to feel that something was wrong with her life. Even though she worked hard every day, why did things never get better? So she asked Mr. Ju to admire her, to make her his spiritual pillar. If she was already feeling hopeless, why not try being someone else's light? Mr. Ju thought she had drunk fake liquor and ignored the nonsense. Instead, he went inside and looked up the meaning of admire. He knew Meijin had been tricked out of her money by some guy and was now under heavy pressure, trying to live a different life. But he himself had been hiding in the countryside, drinking every day just to avoid any human connection. Even though he didn't give her an answer, Meijin didn't give up. She wanted to break through this terrible life, and Mr. Ju was her best direction. Since he wouldn't admire her, then she would admire him instead. Her unique logic left the cold Mr. Ju completely dumbfounded. One day, he and Meijin's dad went to deliver some custom kitchenware, but the buyer made excuse after excuse and refused to pay. Meijin's dad chose to silently swallow the insult, but clearly that wasn't Mr. Ju's style. He stormed back, angrily threatened the man, and got the money back. That evening, just as Meijin was getting off work, she heard Mr. Ju's truck driving behind her. She had hoped he would greet her, but instead he coldly drove right past. She didn't understand why he was so hot and cold. Later, while delivering food, Meijin asked him directly, why was he so warm one day and then suddenly so cold the next? Mr. Ju didn't answer, but said Meijin was just like her father, always acting guilty even when she had every right to be paid. Meijin was afraid to ruin relationships with people she knew, and even more afraid of getting into awkward situations. He didn't want to waste time arguing with a nice person anymore. It was better if they each lived their own lives. He wasn't planning to change anyway. This unpleasant conversation made Meijin feel like giving up on him, but just then a bolt of lightning struck the electric pole nearby and the lights went out instantly. Meijin, without thinking, rushed out into the pouring rain. She knew Mr. Ju was still sitting out there. "Come in! Hurry up! Come inside!" she shouted as the electric wires were about to catch fire. She pushed him inside with one quick shove, and just like that, the two stood there, saying nothing, but their hearts were both pounding with emotions they didn't dare speak, a storm quietly rising between their silence. The next day, Mr. Ju went to the convenience store again, but this time, he just stood outside Meijin's house, house, staring blankly as if lost, unsure what he was afraid of. Even though he had bought an ice cream, he couldn't bring himself to hand it to her. At the dinner table, Mei-jin's mother wouldn't stop talking about Mei-jin's childhood, and as she did, her eyes drifted toward the photo on the wall. Mei-jin tried to read something in her expression, but found nothing. Then, her older siblings burst through the door with noisy energy, and her furious sister, grabbing a slipper to throw in frustration, accidentally hit Mei-jin in the head. She said nothing, just quietly picked up the slipper and angrily flung it outside. Mr. Ju, witnessing the whole thing, saw another side of her, a quiet, no-nonsense strength. Just like her brother once said, when Mei-jin gets angry, she could kick you right off a cliff without blinking. Mr. Ju didn't reply then, but when Mei-jin's hat was later blown away by the wind again, he immediately went to retrieve it for her. That night, when Mei-jin went to buy ice cream, she found herself unconsciously also picking up bottles of soju, because what she'd seen earlier that day had left a deep impression on her. Yet thinking of how Mr. Ju always stayed distant made her feel down. She didn't even understand why she suddenly felt this way. Then on the road, she ran into Mr. Ju and handed him the bottles. Something in Mr. Ju began to change, and that change brought Mei-jin a joy she couldn't explain. The next day, Mr. Ju received his weekly wages. After some hesitation, he gathered the courage to ask Mei-jin's father for her phone number. At that exact moment, her phone rang. It was him. Just those few simple words exchanged were enough to make her smile uncontrollably. Sure enough, when she stepped out of the station, there he was, already waiting outside for her. Beaming with happiness, she walked toward him. Though neither of them said a word during dinner, his gaze kept following her, and she sweetly handed him a tissue. Mei-jin liked this feeling, not needing to flatter or please anyone. On their way home, they happened to run into her sister, but they didn't hide or avoid her. That's what love does. It makes people bold. The next day, Mr. Ju was heading to a job site and spotted Mei-jin walking toward the subway. Without caring that her father was in the truck with him, he pulled over and stopped right in front of her. On the subway, Mei-jin saved his number, but aside from knowing what she liked, he really knew very little else. Then, looking out the window, she saw a billboard ad. What if something good really could happen to me, she wondered, and quietly took a photo and sent it to Mr. Ju. But he didn't reply, because at that moment, his mood was at rock bottom. Just earlier, Mei-jin's brother had tried to help clean up her empty soju bottles while she was out, but seeing her hard-earned trophies about to be thrown away made her furious. It felt like someone was trying to drag her out of a deep pit, but her first instinct was to resist, to lash out, to feel shame. Her sister, meanwhile, was mocking her taste in men, but hearing Mei-jin's quiet reply left her speechless. Mei-jin kept texting Mr. Ju, and even though he never responded, she never got mad. The silent punishments and bitter games from her past relationships, she didn't want that in this one. All she wanted was to share things from her heart. She didn't need to measure how much she loved him. It was enough to just quietly admire and support him. The next day, Mei-jin heard from a friend in the village about how her brother had rushed to clean up the bottles. She felt that their desire to fix her was arrogant. Even if there were a mountain of bottles, she had drunk every drop herself. Her brother found her strange that day, not understanding why she was acting this way. Everyone in the village already knew she drank, so what was there to hide? Mr. Ju told Mei-jin he needed to keep a distance from others. When he didn't care, everything was fine. But when he started to care, even seeing someone walk past him felt annoying. She knew they meant well, but she didn't know why it only made her feel more irritated. Mei-jin deeply related to that. She didn't understand why some people could smile and be happy all day long, while she couldn't even fake it. This tired life gave her nothing but emptiness. Mr. Ju quietly listened to her story, then went to the fridge and pulled out an ice cream he had bought in advance. Mei-jin smiled as she ate it. Two gloomy people, but somehow they kept getting pulled toward each other. The next morning, she stuffed all her bottles into a sack. She realized that some things she had to do herself, not wait for others to push her. Mr. Ju took the money from selling those bottles and bought a few ice creams to give to the village kids who had helped clean up. He even started replying to Mei-jin's messages more often. Maybe it was love, or maybe the effect of being cared for. But Mei-jin also began to open up, chatting with her coworkers about makeup. Mr. Ju, on the other hand, cleaned his whole house and proudly sent pictures of the newly tidied place to her. That evening, he waited for Mei-jin after work so they could ride the bus home together. Just a year ago, he had locked himself in his room, drinking until he passed out. Surrounded by empty bottles, he didn't even bother to move. Thanks to Mei-jin, today he did something he hadn't done in 800 years. It felt like crawling out of the grave and being reborn. He didn't even know if he could sleep tonight. Hearing this made Mei-jin laugh. In the hot summer, while everyone was out weeding the fields, Mr. Ju thoughtfully brought her a bottle of cold water. This quiet care didn't go unnoticed. Mei-jin's sister saw everything and couldn't help but joke, "Are you farming or dating?" She just didn't understand how her little sister could fall for someone like this. But love is strange. Maybe it was because this man was plain, even a little invisible, but the feeling of being with him gave Mei-jin a rare peace. There was no fear of gain or loss. That day, her family accidentally discovered Mei-jin had removed her household registration. Her parents scolded her, but she said nothing. She had fallen for a jerk, a man who not only swindled her out of a huge amount of money, but also disappeared without a trace. Even though she kept chasing him for repayment each month, he treated her terribly. Soon, her credit card would be frozen, received bad credit. She couldn't understand. She was just trying to be kind. So why did things turn out like this? What hurt more than owing the bank money was knowing that man had never cared cared whether she lived or died, had never truly loved her. Meanwhile, Mr. Ju suddenly got a call from an old friend. He ignored the friend's long-winded complaints and instead asked how things were going at the scrapyard. It seemed he wanted to find someone who could help get Meijin's money back. That weekend, Meijin went to the bank again, withdrew all her savings from the past few years, even broke her fixed deposit, and still chose to handle everything quietly without telling anyone. Just as she walked out of the bank, she bumped into Mr. Ju. They greeted each other and took the bus home together. On the ride, Meijin casually mentioned that she had transferred her household registration back home and that the bank wouldn't send any more letters. Mr. Ju had already guessed she would do that. He asked her to give him the man's name, just a name and a phone number, and he'd get the money back. But Meijin stayed silent. Mr. Ju asked her again, and suddenly the mood turned cold. Meijin stormed home, having held back her anger outside. She knew she had become that foolish woman online who got scammed by a man. Mr. Ju remained calm. It was because that scumbag knew Meijin's soft spot that he was able to take advantage of her. Meijin knew this too, but she just couldn't bring herself to confront anyone. Maybe it was because her feelings had been exposed, but Mr. Ju seemed a little flustered. Still, he sweetly made her a bowl of ramen. Meijin sat beside him, bossily telling him to fetch her water. Mr. Ju helplessly obeyed. When she confessed her feelings, Meijin spoke calmly. She asked Mr. Ju to say more. It felt good hearing his compliments. People always say, when you're favored, you become fearless. And Meijin had found someone who favored her. She used to think he was just a down-and-out middle-aged man, no money, ordinary looks, which gave her confidence to be herself, not the meek girl she once was. But what she didn't know was, this man was actually a treasure, a warm, intense lover hiding under a plain shell. Everyone carries hidden secrets, but these two really liked each other. Meijin cherished this moment of mutual attraction. The next day, on her way to the subway, Mr. Ju suddenly pulled up beside her in his truck, staring like a fool. Meijin silently got in, and her sister, seeing this from behind, rushed to catch a free ride. The two who had left late somehow got there before their brother, which confused him. Her coworkers also noticed a change in Meijin, asking curiously what she liked about that man. Thinking about it, Meijin realized maybe it was because he had no shell. Some people are polite but always feel fake, like they're constantly guarded, never letting anyone near their true self. But she saw none of that in him. It wasn't just her coworkers who were curious, even her sister was baffled. In front of others, Mr. Ju stayed silent and cool as usual. But that day, when Meijin didn't come home for dinner because she was working overtime, he got strangely anxious. Alone in the cafe, Meijin tried her best to act like someone who's loved. No one ever saw through her brave face until that man suddenly walked into her world. Meijin secretly watched him from behind, afraid he'd notice her gaze. Mr. Ju ordered a beer and sat quietly beside her, and just seeing him there made her smile. Her fantasy had come true. Even the heavy workload felt a little lighter now. With Mr. Ju, Meijin felt like she had a stabilizer in her life, something that calmed her better than alcohol ever could. Just talking to him for a bit was soothing. Even while working, he'd often find his mind wandering to her. The moment he finished work, he'd rush to the station, waiting for her to get off. But today, Meijin was a little late, so he went to the convenience store to grab 2 sodas and some ice cream. The shop owner, used to seeing him buy alcohol, found it odd he didn't this time. Seeing he didn't want to talk, she kept quiet. Before she could say more, Mr. Ju grabbed his bag and rushed out, only to bump right into Meijin, who had just run out of the station, planning to text him. Not seeing him at first had made her feel a bit disappointed, so this sudden meeting made her blurt out the words in her heart. Mr. Ju felt a little embarrassed hearing such sweet talk out of nowhere. The shop owner, witnessing the whole scene, smiled quietly to herself. Meijin had scored big. On their way home, Meijin started chatting with him about a crazy older sister who used to live there. That woman had been curious and wanted to meet Mr. Ju, but Meijin had stopped her. In her eyes, that woman and Mr. Ju were very similar, both stubborn and wild. That's why she knew they'd probably clash. When Meijin joked that he was transparent, Mr. Ju couldn't help but laugh. Being recognized like that made him genuinely happy. He never expected to be admired by someone. He thought he'd slowly slip into a quiet, simple happiness, but then suddenly got a message from an old friend. Someone had spotted him at a gas station recently, driving his truck, so his cover had been blown. Mr. Ju quickly called back. His old friends were confused. He was right here, so why pretend to be far away? Now that people knew where he was, it was only a matter of time before someone came looking. If those people found him, he'd be finished. To prevent that, his friends insisted they strike first, but maybe not wanting to ruin this peaceful life, Mr. Ju didn't respond. That weekend, he took Meijin to the temple where he had once taken childhood photos. The two of them stood there silently, watching a rainbow stretch across the sky. Maybe it was because of their shared pain and wasted years, but they had grown close, and in that moment, standing beside him, Meijin felt a happiness she couldn't quite explain. Those frustrations all vented out. That evening, as they were walking home, Meijin was mumbling to herself when Mr. Ju suddenly told her to step aside. Turns out there was some kind of dead animal lying in the grass. Living in the countryside, Meijin had long gotten used to things like that. As a kid, she used to often see frog corpses flattened by cars. She kept sipping her coffee without a care while talking about it, and seeing how casually she acted, Mr. Ju couldn't help but look a little disgusted. Meijin really had changed. No longer the timid girl who never spoke up, now she said whatever was on her mind. Since this change, she felt more at ease than ever before. But such change often comes with a chain of events. One day, when Mr. Ju was delivering some wooden panels for a cabinet, the rope holding them suddenly snapped. The two of them quickly got out to gather the scattered boards. Unfortunately, an old gang member happened to spot Mr. Ju working. He was shocked. The once feared President Ju, now doing manual labor. The man sneered, mocking Mr. Ju for acting like some defeated loser. He even joked that Ju was the kind of man who wouldn't shed a single tear even after his girlfriend died. Those words reopened old wounds, and Mr. Ju returned home hollow and lost. But this time, he didn't drink. Meanwhile, Mei-jin had just gotten off work and instinctively went to buy some soju, only to be questioned by the nosy shopkeeper. She casually brushed her off with a few words and went home to tell Ju what happened. Still, she could sense something was off with him. He seemed tired. After being around him for so long, she could tell he needed space. But the moment she got home, her mom asked why she had just come from Mr. Ju's place. After a moment of hesitation, Mei-jin bravely told the truth. Her mom was clearly startled. During a break, her dad spoke privately with Mr. Ju, and though he didn't oppose their relationship, he wanted to give Ju some peace of mind, to encourage him to learn a craft and settle down. That night, Mei-jin went to his house again and noticed unfamiliar texts constantly pinging on his phone. She acted as if nothing happened and handed it to him. She thought, it's not a big deal. If it doesn't work out, we can just say we dated and broke up. Then she casually asked if she could eat some grapes before leaving. Mr. Ju told her about something he once saw on TV, America's famous cliff, where survivors claimed that when they were 2/3 of the way down, the problems that made them jump suddenly didn't seem so important. He said, for someone living in pain, therapy is like not having to jump off that cliff. So once, he tried to get a woman to go to therapy, but unexpectedly she jumped anyway. Mei-jin was stunned. The air turned heavy. After a long silence, she softly responded. Mr. Ju, holding back his pain, said nothing more. He returned to his old habit of drinking. Mei-jin saw him stumbling drunkenly down the road and quietly followed him. He had bought food to feed the stray dogs in the field, but as he waited, they became aggressive. Just as they were about to pounce on him, the once shy Mei-jin threw herself in front of him with her bag raised like a shield. That moment took Ju back 2 years. After his girlfriend's death, he had been a mess. One day, while riding the subway, a voice snapped him out of it and he randomly got off at a stop. At the end of that line, a gang boss was waiting to ambush him. To this day, he still didn't know who warned him. That detour saved his life, and he ended up living in this village only to meet Mei-jin again by chance. The misfortunes meant for him had been stopped because of her. But the closer Mei-jin got, the more scared he became. Their relationship hit a rough patch, and luckily, her brother's timely arrival eased the tension. But things remained cold for a while until Mei-jin took the first step. That day, Ju had made up his mind. He was going to let the dogs tear off his arm just so he could hold himself together with the other. Of course, he had wanted to save that woman back then. He always said that even if someone was a criminal or an alien, it didn't matter, because to him, she was the best. Maybe that text from the gang was what pushed him. Alone, he stormed into the nightclub run by the old gang boss. He warned them that he was on break, and their grudge would be settled when he was in the mood. Until then, they better stop bothering him. If they pushed too far, he'd fight back. Before leaving, he told one of the underlings to find his new sink. Once done, he drove to Mei-jin's office. When she got his text, she left her colleagues behind and ran to him. They went for simple steamed dumplings. Noticing she couldn't reach the sauces, Ju casually moved them closer. She got thirsty after a few bites, and just as she looked around, he got up, grabbed a drink, poured it, and placed it in front of her. She was touched by his thoughtful gestures. Even when only one dumpling was left, he left it for her without hesitation. They said nothing during the meal, but the warm, ambiguous vibe between them said everything. Her brother, finally seeing them together again, felt relieved. Long ago, he had noticed a luxury car key in Ju's bathroom, but while others admired that, Mei-jin didn't react. Her sister sensed her unease and tried to comfort her, but a mix of emotions kept swirling inside. The next day, at work, Mei-jin's manager mocked her pants out of nowhere. Not only did he dismiss her talent, but also attacked her appearance. Constantly being targeted made her feel defeated. She texted Ju to meet for drinks that night. After a few rounds, she began ranting about her day while Ju quietly listened. The boss brought them into the fields, knowing full well that no one could outmatch him there, but instead of teaching Mei-jin how to handle complicated workplace relationships, he just went along with her words, helping to ease the heaviness in her heart. And perhaps it was the alcohol, or just their shared emotions. But late that night, the two of them decided to hike up the mountain together, and as the cool mountain breeze brushed across their faces, Mei-jin instinctively hugged her arms to stay warm, only for Mr. Ju to suddenly pull her tightly into his arms. And that unexpected kiss that followed sent a rush through Mei-jin's heart, making her once cold soul flutter with warmth. And in that moment, she wanted to soak in this relationship completely, to enjoy it fully without worrying about when it might end. But this dreamy moment didn't last long, because soon the former gang leader came looking for Mr. Ju, telling him the gang was in trouble and that as his right-hand man, Ju needed to come back. And although Ju couldn't refuse outright, he asked the leader to give him a bit more time, then arranged to meet Mei-jin by the sunny reservoir where the sunlight danced on his face, and he tried again and again to say something but couldn't find the words, until finally all he managed to say made Mei-jin laugh, because deep down she already suspected this man wasn't ordinary. Yet the unstoppable love blooming between them continued to grow wild, and one day an uninvited guest showed up, completely shattering their peace. And though Mr. Ju didn't explain, he knew time was running out, and as if fate enjoyed enjoyed chaos, Meijin's brother, showing off in Ju's luxury car, ended up crashing it, and Ju didn't hesitate. He threw on his shoes and sprinted after him, the two of them running around the village under the scorching noon sun. And at that moment, Meijin appeared in his vision, just like the first time they met. This girl had always been like the sun, lighting up his dead and dark world, and maybe this was what people meant by gravity, that no matter what, you'd eventually meet the one meant for you, experiencing everything you were destined to. And as he looked at the growing skyline beyond the subway window, Mr. Ju realized it was time to walk out of his emotional utopia, so he followed the train line into the city center to settle unfinished business with his former crew. And once everything was handled, he silently returned to the field where Meijin was working. But his answer didn't satisfy her, and though she said nothing, she stormed back into her room and let her tears fall silently, unwilling to let things end this way. And late at night, she came to him again, knowing that Meijin must feel how different this world was from his. And even if she didn't care about his past, now he was the one wanting to return to that bustling world. And when she didn't respond, Mr. Ju provoked her again, only for her words to pierce straight through his heart. And pretending to stay calm, he asked her to move to the city, saying he should live like the women his brother described, those who pushed baby strollers and blended into the crowd, because that was the life someone like him was supposed to live. And hearing that, Ju's eyes turned red. And the next day, he said goodbye to Meijin's father and drove away in his luxury car, leaving the village behind, while that night, Meijin went alone to his room and called him over and over, only to realize the number was now out of service. And in that moment, all her sorrow exploded like a flood, because that man had completely disappeared from her world and cut off all ties. And back in the city, Mr. Ju returned to his business empire, becoming cold and numb, managing his nightclub like a machine, indulging in alcohol and ignoring all emotions, no longer caring for love. And even though he had so much, he felt empty inside. Until one night at 4 a.m., he saw a familiar jar of kimchi during a late-night meal, and it instantly reminded him of Meijin and their village. Though he knew that life was no longer within reach, and his assistant, used to his moods, calmly accepted that Ju often called him the wrong name, because that's how it is for people who fight their way through the world. No matter what they gain, their hearts always linger back home. And maybe it was that one sentence from his assistant that finally broke open Ju's bottled-up emotions, because he boarded the subway again, heading quietly to the outskirts. And along the way, he felt nervous, not knowing what had become of the girl he missed. And just like before, he waited outside the subway station for her after work. But night fell and she never appeared, so he went to her house again, only to feel something was different as he stood at the door. And just as he was wondering what was going on, a strange, middle-aged woman came out and, hearing his reason for visiting, called for the head of the house. And when a limping, older Meijin's father came out, Ju was left speechless in shock, learning that Meijin's mother had suddenly passed away that fall and the three siblings had moved to Seoul. And looking at the paper with her new contact details, Ju stood frozen, overwhelmed with doubt, unsure what to do next because he hadn't been there during Meijin's darkest time, and now he didn't know if he still had a chance to make things right. But on a bright and sunny afternoon, he finally dialed her number and asked if she had found someone who admired her, and when she said no, he couldn't help but feel happy. And when they met, Meijin teased that she had gained weight and needed to slim down first, which made Ju smile and offer to wait an hour, but she repeated that she needed to lose weight first, and although time had passed and they hadn't seen each other in a while, their longing never faded. And when they started talking about their little village, Meijin stopped walking, finally asking the question she had waited years for, why he had never explained his feelings. And after missing each other for so long, they both knew it was time to truly love one another. And when they went to the traditional market, Ju was still as thoughtful as ever, buying Meijin a pair of comfortable shoes and a big backpack to carry her things, and knowing she was afraid of the cold, he even bought her gloves before they ate. But just as they were enjoying their meal, Ju's assistant called again, ruining the moment, and Ju, annoyed, asked why he was calling on a weekend, only for his assistant to gently remind him it was Saturday, which Ju had forgotten in his days. So he had no choice but to go back to work. Asking Meijin to wait nearby in an electronics store, he hadn't expected that the same girl he once pressured to pay back a debt would show up in the nightclub and suddenly lash out, even swinging a glass bottle at him. Although he quickly flipped her down and pinned her, she still managed to cut his face with the bottle, and that sharp sting made him furious, especially because he had a date with Meijin soon, and he knew she'd worry if she saw him like this. And when the gang leader noticed the cut on his face, he mocked him, saying his hands must be getting slow, though he also noted Ju's drinking problem was clearly getting worse. And after handling everything with the gang, Ju showed up outside the restaurant where he had agreed to meet Meijin, hoping to start over. But the tangled mess of his current life left him conflicted, and the moment he walked in, Meijin immediately noticed the injury on his face, and like always, she lit up his dark and empty world like a spark, especially under the falling first snow of the year. And Ju told her about a recent day when his car broke down, and for some reason he imagined that if the earth suddenly stopped spinning, he could just walk all the way back to that little village from before. And although it was a place he could drive to, he wanted to reach it with his own feet. This was his quiet way of confessing how much he had missed her over the years. But what Meijin hadn't told him was that earlier that day, she had planned to be the villain and crash her ex-boyfriend's wedding to demand the money he owed her. But instead, he screamed at her for half an hour, and so she crushed the glass in her hand in rage, determined determined to sneak away with the wedding cash if she had to. But just then, she received Ju's call and left everything to rush back to his place. And yet, when they arrived, there were liquor bottles all over his hallway. The floor was cracked, and there was no hot water. But Mei-jin didn't complain. Instead, she naturally lay down beside him, and Ju gently covered her with a blanket, as if all the time they'd lost could only be made up through each other's warmth. And though he had built emotional walls around himself for years, when he was with Mei-jin, his words flowed freely. And since he was supposed to collect 5 minutes of happiness each day, he decided to consult Mei-jin 10 times, knowing she actually enjoyed hearing him talk. And she even bought him a mini heater. And while he drank, she quietly made him snacks, and that soft little life started to feel addictive. And maybe their reunion brought a wave of good luck, because Mei-jin's life began to brighten too. She had just switched jobs and unexpectedly ran into her debt-dodging ex-boyfriend right outside the office building. And although she didn't want to talk to him at first, she saw him accidentally bump a woman with his bag while on a call. And just as the woman was about to snap at him, Mei-jin kindly stepped in to explain. And her kindness earned her a half-hearted promise that he'd pay her back tomorrow. Who knew if it was true, but this time she walked away smiling, because she finally got his apology, and that joy was infectious. Even Ju could feel it. And when they were together, she couldn't stop smiling, and she told Ju to remember how this moment felt so it wouldn't hurt as much later. And maybe then his drinking would slow down, and bit by bit, the prison in her heart began to open up. But just as things seemed like they might finally turn around, Mei-jin was betrayed while trying to protect a younger friend who owed gambling debts, and not wanting things to spiral out of control, she quietly took money from the drawer to clean up the mess. And in the elevator, a little girl's innocent presence gave her a few seconds of unexpected joy. And after coming out of the convenience store, she dropped some coins and expected them to disappear into the sewer. But surprisingly, they landed perfectly on the iron grate, safe and untouched. And even though the world around her felt like a pit, a small miracle had happened in that exact moment, and the stubborn little coin reflected everything. It was hard, but life hadn't let down those who dared to hope. And when you feel out of place in this world, instead of trying to change or blame it, maybe it's better to build your own comfort zone and rescue yourself, because the love they gave each other was still gently healing them both. And so, may these two souls in a parallel world finally break through and find their way to peace.
ヤフーフリマ